Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hey, everybody.
We're with The Road to Retail, where Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, and ideas and examples from our past to what can help a small, emerging, challenger, or dormant consumer packaged good product win in the retail marketplace. We're going to talk about everything from determining if you're ready to grow, leave the farmer's market or your own, garage, how to start. Do you have confidence in your supply chain? Proving your business online is always a good way to start. How to secure distribution with a national retailer, and then ultimately how to go about driving your business. The bottom line is Tracy and I would love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important aspects of this journey to growing your brand.
Yes, Bruce and I have been in consumer packaged goods, commercial operations for over 30 years. So we've got a lot of experience that we're going to share with you over our future episodes. And you're probably asking yourself, what do we mean by commercial operations? So what we mean by that is sales, marketing, trade marketing, broker management, customer management, agency selection, divestitures, acquisitions. So we have a lot of experience that run the gamut of consumer packaged goods and commercial operations. And then in future episodes coming very soon, we're going to be inviting our friends, colleagues, and industry experts to join us, where we're going to ask them their opinions on certain topics that we think will be very exciting for you guys to learn about. We'd really like you to like our page on LinkedIn called Road to Retail, and also on our YouTube page where we do post our videos. And on LinkedIn on a bi-weekly basis, we will be posting our episodes. So we hope you're going to enjoy them today. So Bruce, tell us about what we're going to talk about today.
All right, Tracy. So today we're going to jump in and discuss how to prepare for a retailer meeting. Previously, we've talked about the importance of being very discriminating in terms of who you approach, making sure your brand or company is a good match for that retailer and their shopper. So part of what we're also going to talk to today is about a year ago, Tracy and I interviewed buyers from 12 of the largest food, drug, mass, natural channel, dollar accounts in the country. So we're flavoring this with their input as well as what they look for as they consider smaller, emerging, or dormant brands that may have been bought out of a bigger company but have had no love and attention for several years. So here we go. One of the first things to do is make sure you provide your buyer that you're meeting with in advance an agenda and a list of the attendees that will be at your meeting. Couple of points here. The fewer people, the better. Everyone in these meetings, whether in person or virtual, need to have a role. Having someone sitting there like a potted plant, possibly, down on their phone, the buyer's going to be like, what are they doing here? We've also had buyers tell us that when they don't know in advance that there's going to be a big group of people, it kind of puts them on alert. They're kind of expecting something funky. And lastly, the more people you bring in, it's just going to take that much longer to do introductions. And I can tell you this, these buyers, they meet with a lot of people and they're on a tight schedule. Okay. So if you want to burn up 15 of your 50 minutes introducing the 9 people, do that at your own risk. And one other thing before I ask Tracy is we have been hearing more, and I just had one last week, where we're starting to deal with retailers or hear about in-person meetings coming back. So as we talk about this stuff, make sure you're being flexible, that you're prepared to either do it in person or be able to do it virtually. Tracy?
Yeah, some great points, Bruce. So a couple of things I want to emphasize. One is the number of people. You do not want to overwhelm the buyer with a lot of people in the meeting or on Zoom, whichever it would be. I've seen examples where a new brand, brought like 7 or 8 people and one buyer. Their thought process was, oh, we're going to show, the strength of our team and how many people we have. It actually didn't have that effect. The buyer was definitely kind of put off and overwhelmed. The other thing that I want to say is if your founder is attending the meeting, have them tell the brand story. No one tells the brand story about their baby better than the founder. So that's just a little tip. If the founder is going to be in the meeting, definitely make sure that they tell the brand story. And then everybody else, like Bruce said, needs to have a role. So one more point we want to make here is make sure that you follow up a couple of days before the meeting to make sure that it's still on the buyer schedule. The buyer meets with lots of people. So you don't want to just assume that the meeting is on. If you had a meeting invite, a month or two ago, I had an example just recently where I was invited to a meeting back in December for mid-February. So again, making sure that you follow up a couple days before, resend the agenda if you want to. The other thing is you may be asked to send in advance a new item form. Some retailers have a new item template, so one-page PowerPoint. They may ask for that in advance so that they have time for a few minutes to review what you're going to be talking about. So just a couple points there. Bruce, what do you have?
Tracy, all that was really good. The only thing I have to add is to reiterate Tracy's point about touching base a couple of days in advance. Again, when we did these interviews, several of the buyers said how they really liked that little prompt because it does a few things. As Tracy said, one, you get to figure out and make sure you're still on their agenda and nothing weird has happened where there's a corporate function that they now have to go attend. Also on that, not only confirm the meeting, remind them of what you're meeting about. We had one verbatim, I'll never forget, this buyer from a very large retailer said, I can't tell you how many times I'm looking at my schedule, heading to a meeting room to meet with a supplier. I have no idea what we're talking about. Okay, so they appreciate that. So you just write it and say, hey, Tracy, just confirming we're on for next Wednesday, where we're going to talk about our exciting new line extension, the X, and do that. So that'll serve you well. Tracy, anything else before we push on?
Nope, that was great, Bruce. Thanks.
Okay, great. So the next thing we want to stress is understand the retailer you're meeting with thoroughly. So as we previously discussed, you've done some research and kind of demographic matching, either officially with as much data as you can find or afford, or just logically. And the example Tracy and I always use is if you have a high-end skincare product, you're probably not going to the dollar stores to launch, okay? So make sure you're a good match. But so now you have this meeting, read everything you can on this retailer so that you know what is going on. Annual reports, 10Ks, all this, of course, if they're publicly traded, press releases. Don't ask questions where the answers are easy to find out. Example, if they've made a couple of big announcements in the press about expanding their commitment to natural and organic products, don't ask if natural and organic is important to them, okay? Don't ask how many stores they have. Don't do things that make them think you're a knucklehead or you're just lazy. This stuff is in the public domain. Get into their stores in advance. If the retailer you're meeting with is not near you, which first off is a bit of a danger zone because you want to project out from where you might have some strength, send in friends, family, or fly or drive to a couple of markets, take photos, and be able to talk about this. Don't just go in the store that's across the street from headquarters, because you could see stuff that's being tested there that's not being tested elsewhere. So if you say, hey, well, that's a really great new light fixture as you come in the front door, the buyer might be like, yeah, there's 2 in the country. We're just kind of checking them out. So you get a demerit there. If you want to know, like, strategically, is this category being de-emphasized? Is it being invested in, et cetera? If you don't know that, this is where hooking up with a good sales agent or broker can help you. Because again, these buyers told us, and Tracy and I've seen it over all these years, these buyers want to know that you as a smaller company are not going to be needy. So if you recruit somebody to represent you or work with you, they'll feel better that you're not cutting corners on expense, and they'll be like, those guys know what they're doing, so I feel comfortable. Tracy?
Yeah, just want to emphasize one of the points that Bruce made, which was taking pictures of the sets and getting into the stores. So getting into the stores, you may learn that there's a brand or some items that are being discontinued. So you can talk about that during the buyer meeting. Or maybe you see a brand that has like 10 items on the shelf and has 2 whole shelves. Maybe they're over skewed. That would be an opportunity. The other thing to know is when the review schedule is, which you're probably presenting during a review schedule. So make sure that you have an idea of when the reset is and also when initial orders will be placed, because that's going to be really important. Buyers want to know you understand your supply chain, and knowing their deadlines and timelines is going to be really important. And like Bruce said, if you don't know, get with somebody that does know, either a colleague or a broker or a sales agent, that can help you through that process.
Good points.
Yeah. So, you know, of course, we're living in a different world these days with COVID. So there are going to be, I think, moving forward in the second half of this year, a hybrid. As Bruce mentioned, some retailers are going to be going back to the office. They are going to be taking in-person meetings. So you want to make sure that your presentation works for either in-person or online. So test it out, as Bruce mentioned. Make sure that everything works on your Zoom, or whether it's meetings, Teams. So there's all kinds of different platforms that retailers use. Make sure that you know how those platforms work. So if you've never used Microsoft Teams before, maybe it's a Google Meet, make sure that you know how to bring up the presentation so everybody can view it. Another thing that you might want to think about is using some video. So maybe use a little hype or trailer video within your presentation. Make it entertaining for the buyer so that it keeps their attention. Bruce?
Yeah, good points. So a couple of other things, I'll pull it back even to another layer. After all these years of doing these meetings, even at retailers where I've been to the building a lot, know the logistics. If you are going to a retailer where you've never been before and you drive in or fly in the day before, again, assuming it's an in-person meeting, do a practice run. Know where you park, know where the building is, know which door. I mean, how many times have we gone to a city where it might have a Main Street address, but the door is really around the corner on 5th Street, right? So know this, because again, being late or saying that you didn't know where the building was, you just look like a knucklehead, and you're burning up your own time, and you're already sending the message that you might be needy. So you don't want to get into the batter's box with 2 strikes, although baseball's on strike. So I guess, who knows, that's a bad baseball analogy. And lastly, as Tracy said, load in all your materials onto your tablet or laptop if you're having an in-person meeting. Do not count on their Wi-Fi working. Maybe of all the days your computer has a little glitch. Eliminate as many variables as possible. Load any video onto your machine. Don't keep your presentation in the cloud. If you do, that's great, but also have it on a flash drive if you have to improvise and go from there. Tracy, anything else before we roll on?
No, I don't think so, Bruce. You covered it.
Okay, great. So now be prepared to crisply articulate why and how your brand is different from what they already carry. Tracy and I are going to talk about this probably in every episode. These buyers are very busy. One of them had a great quote. This person said, I really only have 2 things that I have to manage, my time and my space. And I'm looking for people that can help me manage both efficiently, right? So again, another quote was, don't bring me a cut and paste brand. Tracy and I, we use the example of gluten-free chocolate chips. If you're the 8th one, what is your point of difference? Because you don't want to only compete on price. Are you a cause-related company? Do you source only from like local farmers? What is your story and why are you different? Practice your presentation. Tracy and I are going to get into the guts of this in another episode, but practice it. Make sure you can do it on time. If there are transitions between you and other people, make sure you know that, hey, Tracy, you're picking it up on slide 12. Make sure you know these things. And then lastly, understand what you can cut out of your meeting if your buyer is 10 minutes late, or if they come in and sit down and say, I got to leave 10 minutes early. That's actually another good point. Right when the buyer comes and you introduce, do a time check. Say, hey, Tracy, we're still good till 10, right? And Tracy would say yes, or he'd say, you know what, I got to go at 10 minutes of, I have to be in this other building for a meeting with my manager. So confirm that, but always know what you can cut out to stay on time, because these buyers, they're very busy. They meet with a ton of people, and you may be unlucky and be in one of those time slots where they're going to try to make up the time to get back on schedule. Tracy?
Yeah, all great points, Bruce. I think the biggest thing I want to mention is make sure that you don't read the presentation and that it's conversational. So my rule of thumb is if I have a 30-minute meeting, I want my presentation to be about 15 minutes so that we can then have 15 minutes of dialogue. Allow the buyer to talk, ask questions, let him talk or her talk about what's important to them. It's all about dialogue and connecting and building a relationship. You're not going to build a relationship with that buyer if you talk for 25 minutes and you have 5 minutes left and go, oh, okay, what questions do you have? And then there's really not enough time. So our rule of thumb is listen more than you talk. And that comes to having a 10 to 12 page presentation, no more than 15 pages, that you don't read, that you go through quickly. They know how to read, so hit the highlights of each page and then move on, get through quickly so that you can have that dialogue. You will be amazed at how much you can learn by just letting the buyer do a lot of the talking.
Yep. Thanks, Tracy. And sorry about that. Tracy, this is one of the most important points, folks. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I either did it to myself or did it to people I worked with, sent them into these meetings with 2-inch thick decks. And I'm like, damn, I got this thing killed. I've thought of everything they could possibly ask. Needless to say, as time went on and I learned more, that was the last thing. The buyers dread the big deck. A buyer at one of the largest retailers in the country said the ideal length of a deck is 12 to 15 pages, and that includes a cover page and a thank you page. Now, what I would say is in your appendix, and Tracy and I are going to cover this, your appendix can be as long as you want. Like if you have some studies or taste tests, put the results back there and just tell them it's in the appendix. And if they really want to dig in to your sample size of your test, they'll go look, but don't burn up 15 minutes talking about the sample size of your taste test, because they might not care. They might just trust you. Tracy?
Yeah, so the last point we want to make is know what your objective is before you go into the meeting. You would be surprised at how many salespeople don't know really what they want out, or what result they want out of that meeting. So is it a store test? Is it full distribution? Some retailers have a local program. So there's all kinds of different options for distribution. You don't have to go in and hit the home run and say, oh, I want all stores. You can, but be prepared to negotiate or have the buyer say, well, I'll take this in 200 stores and we'll see how it goes, and then we can expand from there. Or, hey, I'd like to start out with you as a local brand and then see how you do. They want to have proof of concept. Are you coming in there to present your new innovation and new products? You're already in a retailer and it's review time. You're trying to keep the items that you have and then show the new items that you have. So just make sure that before you go into the meeting, you really know what you want to do. You may be just going in to say, okay, I've been in 200 stores. I think we're performing really well. And now I'd like to talk with you about expanding to 500 stores or 1,000 stores. Just know what your goals and objectives are, and don't be shy about telling the buyer what you want. They want to know so they can say yes or no. If you don't ever ask, you'll never get the answer. Bruce?
Thanks, Tracy. And this is really important, is to make sure not only you know what you want, but when you do have the presentation, that you're not overtly nervous. And a lot of these meetings are big time, right? You're a small emerging brand. This could maybe make or break you, or the proverbial take you to the next level. But some people, I was thinking about this, you kind of get, remember the old long ski jumper, Eddie the Eagle? You get so locked in. So you're on the ramp and you're so locked in, you don't see anything else. And then you launch and you're into your presentation. And then you're trying not to kill yourself when you land, and the buyer's like, that was great. What do you want? Well, I don't know. I really wanted to get through the presentation. Well, you did. Now, what do you want? We had a number of buyers in our interviews say that over all the years, they've gotten to the end of presentations and they have no idea what the people want because they didn't say anything. They just wanted to tell them about their brand. So as Tracy said, is it a test? Is it a new item? Do you just want to go online and try? Are you just there to see if they might have an interest next time if you're trying to raise some money? So state your objective up front, because the buyer will be able to adjust his or her mind, and they say, oh, these guys are trying to go big time. They want chain wide. So I might have this criteria. They want a 50 store test. They know that they're killer in New England. Okay, I got 70 stores there. So now I'll listen with that in mind. So be really clear what you want. Tracy, the big finish.
The big finish. Thanks so much for joining us today. I hope you found our topic today very helpful. And again, we can be found on LinkedIn at our Road to Retail page. Please like that. Also, our YouTube page, Road to Retail. And we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. I did want to throw out there that one of our next future episodes will be giving you a recap and a bird's eye view from next week's Expo West, and letting you know what kind of fun things that we saw there. So we're looking forward to that episode, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you.